It's Naomi and Joel Guy, and he hates when I say "what up, bitches" to start podcasts.
We just started recording for like 3 minutes before we realized we weren't, and I had said to Naomi at the top of the episode, I feel the phrase "what up, bitches" is a little bit demeaning, but now hearing it a second time, I'm like, oh, it's snazzy. It's got pop, it's got zing. And, you know, bitches is really a gender-neutral term now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a term of camaraderie. It's like bra or bruh or bro or homie.
Who the fuck says bra?
I don't know, some assholes. Naomi, before we try our drink and get into the episode, which is, once again, why women deserve less, I just wanted to plug the fact that we have a Patreon. We have a Patreon account where we have exclusive access to episodes, including some that we have taken down from our main feed. Ooh, special content. Early access to a lot of our episodes when we remember to edit them and post them on time before we actually drop them to our main subscribers. And then a map of the greater Phoenix area with lots of restaurants and date activities and cool places to go that we've personally been to and can strongly recommend one way or another.
And I will be adding to it when I move to San Diego.
You will be adding to it. That is awesome. So yeah, we give all of our money from the Patreon, and unfortunately then some, because we don't make very much money on it right now, to trans organizations right now. We in the past have given money to abortion access funds as well. I do want to make it clear that we will give you access to some of our exclusive content if you can provide evidence that you are doing the same thing, whether through us or through your own like personal funds. If you can, you know, send us an email and say, hey, I have been giving to abortion access funds, I've been giving to trans funds, we're more than happy to give you some of the links to that exclusive content. It is more important to us that, you know, good things are achieved than, you know, gatekeeping this. But that said, we would like to make an impact as an organization, so if you're not doing it right now, we would love for you to subscribe and get access to all the behind-the-scenes access information. Anything else to add?
I'll show you pictures of my boobs.
Naomi will show pictures of boobs. Awesome. That is a definitely real promise. Federal Trade Commission, please do not come after us for false advertising. With that, Naomi, what are we drinking today?
Today we are drinking the Diabolo, I don't know how to say that still, sparkling French lemonade, blueberry citron flavored, naturally flavored, crafted with naturally sourced ingredients and B vitamins. Again. Still sucks. Still not my favorite.
It's like one of those things you squeeze into water, like the added flavor boosts. I think Kroger has a blackberry lemonade that tastes very similar to this. It's fine. It's not soda. It's not juice. It's something in between. A much worse, like, stepchild.
It's the ugly redheaded stepchild.
Whoa, we are not against redheads on this podcast. Just ugly redheads.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Naomi, Chapter 5, Part 2. Do you remember anything about Chapter 5, Part 1 of this god-awful text?
All I remember is the long explanation of why his comparison to a Black Widow Catch-22.
Fair. Keep in mind, listeners, that we record these episodes several weeks apart. If you are listening to an edited compilation of this, we've been recording this for the better part of like 2 months now. So something.
And every day it makes me more and more depressed about this world.
The recording sessions are not consecutive, so Naomi may forget some details. I may forget some details from time to time. Part 2 of Chapter 5 goes over why Aaron believes that, and by that I mean the author of the book, not Myron, whose name is on the book. Aaron believes that women have no interest in relationships with men. In Part 1, he explained how women had no interest in having sex with men, and now he's like, women have little to no interest in actually pursuing men. Something which, boy, I would really like to dig into.
And I'm going to repeat this. Why aren't more women lesbians?
And I'll repeat this, I think Why Aren't More Women Lesbians is the title of this book when we create a book that is entirely a counter-argument to why women deserve less. So, moving forward, after some really horrible statistical analysis on Aaron's part, he decides to bring in some new information, complete with citations and everything. If this isn't enough to convince you, perhaps the bevy of data that's come from online dating will. Here's nearly every single bit of data points to women being only fractionally interested in men. That's a very bad sentence. First, the famous OkCupid study where women rated 80% of men as unattractive. Have you heard about this?
Mm-mm.
Cool. So he gives a link to archive.org from a 2009 OkCupid blog article. And the basic premise is that I believe this blog was run by an active OnlyFans. OkCupid, I'm mixing those up in my head for some reason. OkCupid employee who dug into the data that he was obtaining from the OkCupid app, I believe with their permission, and used it to draw conclusions about the world of dating. I think there's an important caveat here, because this might be a representative sample of OkCupid users, but that isn't necessarily a representative sample of all people on apps, all people doing virtual dating, or all people dating. Also, they never actually published the data that they were using to draw these conclusions. He gives you kind of an idea of where he got it, but never a sample size or never like an actual data set. And so he could just be making this up completely. We don't know the sample size of his conclusions or if there was a placebo group, anything like that. Several people in the comments on this archived article even pointed this out. So nearly 15 years later, we still don't have the data, and I think it's fair to say maybe this dude just doesn't like women and had a bone to pick, which, believe it or not, there's a lot of men out there who have strong opinions on women completely unsubstantiated by evidence. I don't know if we know of any men like that, but I think they exist. I think they exist. So the author of this piece proposes that we can look at the attractiveness of users and use data to see who gets the most clicks. He starts by giving some photo examples of who the most attractive users are. He then provides a graph explaining how male users ranked women's attractiveness. He does not mention at all how he obtained the data or the size of the data set, which might be helpful. He says male and female users ranked women and men from 0 to 5, 0 being least attractive and 5 being most attractive. I would say that's a weird thing to ask because he never really explains what is attractive. Is it literally just looks? Because I would often click on profiles of people when I was on OkCupid who seem to have like quirky hobbies or funny quips or interesting like photos. I think it's just looks, even though the world of dating is much more than that. He doesn't explain this, but it's looks based upon pictures, which is different than looks of how you appear in real life.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll need you to presume that you have actually seen the link. And so he gives 4 photos at the top, which are his examples of women who are the most attractive, ranked by users. Again, he doesn't explain how this happened. He just says it happened at some point.
Okay.
And then women who are middle of the pack.
Okay.
Right? The 2 photos he uses are of skinny white women, likely in their 20s. They're high resolution, almost professional quality photos, and both appear to have filters.
Okay.
The 2 he says are medium attractiveness are 2 very still attractive people. One could imagine one's possibly mixed race, maybe Asian, and the other is a white woman. Both are lower resolution than the prior images. One is much grainier. Both women seem slightly older than the prior 2 women, but not by much. You can also click around and you can see the male images, even in this archived article. All are of skinny to skinny fat white men in their mid-20s. The 2 ranked very attractive are also high-resolution photos, almost professionally shot. The 2 ranked middle of the road are low-quality, almost candid photos, where you can barely make out any of the facial details of the dudes. Like, it's weird lighting and shadow and all this stuff. So, my issue with this is perhaps something super obvious. Are men judging attractiveness based off anything other than quality of picture and age of the people?
Ooh.
Because the examples he gives, and if he gave more, maybe I could, like, prove or disprove this, but the examples he gives that he considers as, like, the best representation implies to me that, like, both sexes are looking for photos that, like, clearly depict the person in a positive light.
Yeah.
Women are also looking, not necessarily for specific facial features, but just for good quality pics that show their potential partners in a good light. There's one photo of a guy who has like his face kind of contorted. There's one where he's like on a ski slope, but like his face is entirely in shadows. You can't really make out what he looks like. Even with tens of millions of users on OkCupid, he provided 8 photos of people to show.
It's
It's very, very difficult to draw any professional conclusions, but my likely assumption is just people find people more attractive if their photos are higher quality.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing about like any dating app. Like if I'm swiping through pictures and like the vast majority of the times that I'm on dating apps, I'm looking for both women and men. I would say that I swipe right on more women because the men post pictures of only in groups. So I'm like, who are you? Like, which one are you? And if there are single pictures, it's like them in a hat and sunglasses and like, or like a hoodie or something. I'm like, who are you in these pictures? Like, I'm trying to figure out who you are.
We'll get to this later, but we are going to get to what women find attractive in men and why they swipe left or right. And that is one of the reasons. Okay, so I think the author of this article is just proving women like men who can take good photos. And I think he's also proving that men similarly go after people who have like super attractive photos. The problem is, and this blows a hole in Myron's theory, is that he notes that the men who are ranked as best looking by women have really horrible success when they message the women considered the least attractive by their fellow men. So men who are ranked like a 5 by women have the least success when they message women who are ranked like a 0 or 1 by men. Their messaging success rates craters, with many women not replying at all when they attempt to initiate conversation. This doesn't make any sense if Aaron is right about the world, because ugly women should love the attention of all incredibly attractive men. If women have incredibly high standards and are only going after a specific type of man, they should immediately open up when a super attractive guy messages them.
Yeah.
But it does make sense when we remember the Oxford study,
Yeah.
which we've cited numerous times, which found that women find really attractive men intimidating or sketchy because they consider them less trustworthy and more likely to cheat or to manipulate them, which I'm sure has never happened in the history of dating.
No, never.
So long story short, the evidence he's citing here is incredibly weak. At best, he's proving women on OkCupid in 2009 only like the 20% of men who can take good photos on the app. Nothing more, nothing less. And the evidence is super bad. But wait, I'm being unfair because he cites multiple pieces of evidence. Let's get to the second one.
Okay.
Various reports show women only swipe right on 3 to 14% of men's profiles. Now, this is labeled citation 18. And this isn't citation 18 because he gives 3 separate links under citation 18 in his link list. That's not how citations work, but that's how he does it. All of them are bad, too. Keep in mind, most men do a horrible job on their profiles with bad photos and stupid jokes and generic interests. Not swiping is not women saying that they find 97% of men unattractive. It's saying they don't find them interesting enough to engage with. And that's an idea we're going to return to again.
Okay.
But also, the gender ratios are biased, so women have a lot more men to swipe through than men do of women. They can be more selective just because they have more ground to cover. That doesn't mean if they met a dude at a party who they had swept left on in like a dating app that they wouldn't talk to them. It just means in the specific world of dating apps, they're going to process a lot more men and be a little more selective. What do I mean by that? By women having more ground to cover? Well, according to the stats I pulled, offered by the respective companies, Tinder users are about 80% male.
Okay.
OkCupid users are 74% male. Bumble users are 68% male. Even the app where it's like women have all the control, 68%. Hinge is actually the best gender ratio, with about a 65 to 35 gender split.
This is like reminding me of our brother who's been on the podcast talking about the ratios between men and women in the San Francisco area and how it's like a 60-40.
Yeah. So he's trying to pretend that like the fact that women swipe less on men is indicative of some like greater idea that women consider men unattractive, but also there's just a shit ton more men to dig through. And that's another idea we're going to return to, because when you have a lot of men to dig through, there's a very simple mindset you can get into, which is not a judgment on women or men. It's just the way these dating apps work. So what's the first link that he provides of these 3? Well, the first is an article titled Men on Dating Apps, the Math Behind Dating Apps. Women only like 4 out of 100 profiles. Men are more likely to swipe right. This is written by the Economic Times. By that I mean IndiaTimes.com, because this is a May 2020 article on dating on the app Quack Quack. You know, Quack Quack. Quack Quack.
No idea.
Naomi has no idea what I'm talking about. You know, the popular Western dating app. No, it's an app in India for Indian singles with 9 million users in India as of the time of this article.
9 million! Wow!
I mean, that's not a huge amount, but like, it's growing. It like has some success.
Yeah.
So a male user on this app, according to the article, chats with 10 user profiles on average, while a woman user does so with 25 user profiles on an annual basis, on an average basis, notes the survey, which also revealed that about 60% of users who create profiles upload their photos, while 40% of these 9 million people are apprehensive and don't use that option. A male user on this app logs in almost 20 times a day, while a female user logs in 26 times a day. The dating platform was the one that provided these stats. I couldn't find anything more specific about like gender ratios. Let's assume that they're like equal or like better than the other ones. So the article that he provides as evidence is A, highly specific to the world of India, and B, has some interesting caveats, because the app itself admits women swipe a lot less than men, but also talk to more of them. They're more willing to initiate conversations with them than men are of women. So women are 2.5 times more likely to initiate a conversation with a man. Perhaps men are the ones who who aren't going out. Maybe men are the ones who aren't interested in women. They also log in a lot more frequently than men, indicating genuine interest in finding a partner, right?
Yeah.
You'd think if you're logging in multiple times a day, you're trying to achieve something, you're trying to find the perfect match. I would argue that you would be able to prove disinterest if they logged in significantly less than men, but that's not what the evidence even indicates. Also, 40% of people on this app don't provide photos. So it's like, what does it say at all about the swipe rate if men are like, ooh, female, I can swipe on that with absolutely nothing to go off of. And women are like, maybe this mysterious person who I don't know anything about is not someone I feel comfortable swiping. I think it's also worth indicating the cultural context of India. India is still a country that struggles with insane misogyny. I do think it's getting better. Pew, for instance, did some interesting reporting about kind of Indian individuals' perceptions of gender and how people's perceptions of the roles men and women should play in society has changed over time. But there's still a lot of like very high-profile assaults and rapes that happen in India and make international attention. And then you hear about thousands of women going and protesting this, and then absolutely no change is happening because all of the power is still concentrated in men. The reason I bring that up is women have genuine fear of men in India and probably feel very uncomfortable meeting random men who they have not thoroughly vetted. Even like a whiff of red flags on these apps is probably enough to have them move on. But even with that in mind, women are still more likely to approach men than they are of women. So even with these conditions, women are more interested. Great evidence, Aaron. Incredible. Second link. The second link is a listicle. Not a literal listicle, but same format of just giving a bunch of junk and not really explaining it. It's from review42.com. It says 40 plus Tinder stats and facts that will change your dating game. This says that men swipe right 46% of the time, while women swipe right 14% of the time on Tinder. Remember that ratio from earlier. That is 80% of Tinder users worldwide are men. Mm-hmm. It's worse in specific places like the UK, and this very article says the following. Business of Apps says that a whopping 89% of Tinder users in the UK are male. 89% of all Tinder users in the UK are male, only 9% are female, 2% identifying as another gender. These Tinder male and female stats reveal that the male to female ratio in the UK is 9-1. For every woman, there are 9 men available. So first, let's recall, once again, many men suck at taking photos of themselves. That might play a role. Second, women have a lot more options. He might respond and say that, them selecting less men makes them more aloof, but it's more women having more capability to filter for specific traits. Like, if you really want to date a tall person, you have more tall people that you can select from, right? Yeah. You're going to swipe a smaller percentage of people, but you don't have to make as many concessions like men have to. I would argue men have less women to pick from and have to make some concessions, some of which they might not like but are forced to do so. Now, you might say, Joel, that's a bit of a leap. You're assuming an awful lot about people's motivations, and I agree. So I looked into what surveys say about the reasons people swipe. So I have a question for you. What are some of the reasons you think you either would immediately swipe right or left on people's profiles?
Attractiveness, doing an interesting activity in the picture, altogether fun-looking person. Like
those are all reasons Naomi would swipe left. She doesn't like those people.
Yeah. If all of your pictures make you seem like you're fun, or like if you have some like candid pictures, like I don't want posed pictures. Mm-hmm. I want like someone that's fun, that's like relaxed. So I think that those are probably my top 3 reasons to swipe right.
So one thing I should mention, and just for people who are like completely unfamiliar with dating apps, the general thing in most dating apps is you see a photo of someone with some information about their profile. You can swipe on your phone left if you don't want to match with that person, and swipe right if you do want to.
It's basically a giant game of smash or pass.
Sure. And I think there's also certain apps where you can like swipe up and you can super like them or other stuff like that, which puts you at the top of their feed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are all different things that have been introduced to like monetize these apps because there's a lot of money to be made on matching people. So I did have some difficulty finding surveys on the reasons people swipe. I think there's a lot of intuitive reasons people can think of. Yeah. So I was able to find one survey. I don't think it's the highest quality, but I looked for a while, and this was really the only one, and I think it makes a lot of sense. There's very little that's controversial here. The dating app Badoo in 2018 asked 5,000 people if certain features made them more or less likely to swipe, and found the following. So what makes women swipe right? 30% of women said they're more likely to swipe right if there's a profile picture in the countryside. 29% more likely if there's a profile picture with a dog in it. 18% a profile picture showing tattoos. 18% more likely if it's a man with a beard. 7% a profile picture showing a car. And 8% a profile picture taken in the gym. Now, the same women also said some reasons that they swipe left. One big reason, 54% of women said that they're less likely to swipe left if there's a photo of them with an attractive woman. What do you think about that?
I would say yes, but I would also say add on to that if you can tell that they cropped out their ex-girlfriend.
Right.
Like it's a cropped picture. They're like, "Oh, I look really good in this picture, but I'm going to crop out someone very intentionally in such a way that makes it look like that is my ex-girlfriend."
I mean, I think there could be a self-conscious aspect to it where it's like, I have to compete with that.
Yeah.
There's maybe he's cheating on someone.
Yeah.
There's
Maybe he wants me to bring me in as a third.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, even if it's just like a sister or something, often like the posing of the photos indicate the type of relationship.
We all love that game, Siblings Are Dating.
That's a fun game.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that as a game show? Oh, that doesn't translate well to an audio format. Yeah. 49% of
Special
women
episode.
say they are more likely to swipe left if there are group photos, which is hard to tell which of the people they are. I think group photos are fine. It's just you have to have like 2 or 3 photos first where you clearly establish who you are. And then, it's like, look, I have friends too.
You have
Besides
friends?
the fact you have
I
like,
don't
a
like
social
you.
network. 47% of women say they're more likely to swipe left if there are shirtless photos. I think that's like an arrogance, ego thing. I think it can also be a lifestyle thing where it's like you spend a lot of time at the gym. Maybe, we're not going to be compatible in that regard. On that note, 37% of women say they're less likely to swipe left if there's a profile photo taken in a gym.
I would say that's not an automatic left, but I know that like if I were to swipe right and you tell me like, oh, I go to the gym like 7 days a week, our lifestyles are just very different.
Sure. But keep in mind, 8% of women said they're more likely to swipe right if there's a profile picture taken in the gym.
Yeah.
So 8% of women are like, oh my God, that is perfect with my lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm attracted to that sort of thing. And 37% are like, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
32% don't like mirror selfies, less likely to swipe. And 19% say posing with safari animals.
Dead or alive?
I'm going to guess dead.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's like I'm a hunter
Only
and I just
19%?
murdered a giraffe or something. I don't know exactly what that means. Men are similar. I think you can see some commonalities. Men say in the same survey they're more likely to swipe right if there's a photo of the women in their underwear or bikini. 33% say that. 33% also say a profile picture in the countryside. 25% say a profile photo taken in the gym. 21% say a mirror selfie. 21% say a profile with a dog. And 14% say a profile picture showing tattoos. Keep in mind that tattoo thing. That'll come up later.
Okay.
What makes men swipe left? 40% say group photos, where it's hard to tell which is which. 34% say a photo of them with an attractive man. Exact same reasons as we mentioned above. Photo of them taken with a filter, such as dog nose or ears. 29% say it's less likely that they're swipe
Interesting.
right on them. 21% lack of a full-length photo. So it's like, okay, you're cute, but like, what's the whole package? And you know what I'm dealing with.
Cannons. Absolute cannons.
Absolute cannons. 20% say they're more likely to swipe left if there's a photo of them in their underwear. So what did we say? 47% was
But
it?
only 20% of men said that.
33% say it's more likely to swipe right. 20% says it's more likely
No,
to
that's
swipe left.
in a bikini though, I thought. Oh, underwear or
yeah.
bikini.
Naomi, there are some good Christians on these apps. And 12% say they're less likely to swipe on them or more likely to swipe left if there's a photo of them riding a horse.
Why? Because they're afraid of horse girls.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Look,
kind of
a woman
intimidating.
can never love you as much as she loves her horse.
That's very true.
I mean, can a man support a woman like a horse can for hundreds of miles a week? Yeah. Okay, so consider your profile photo and what features you have or don't have. I think a lot of men believe, based on people like Andrew Tate and Myron Gaines, that they need to be jacked and swole to pick up women, but a lot of women seem to think that's not attractive. Not that they hate jacked bodies, but it plays into the exact same Oxford dynamics we keep hammering on. The third link is a Medium post. Medium is a blogging platform where people can just write articles about shit. This is a really high quality article. It digs into the subreddit Tinder data, our Tinder data, where people post their Tinder information and their demographics for people to see. This article deals with 4 people.
What?
High quality information. They look at 4 posts and are like, these are examples that are, I guess, the average experience. And Myron is like, oh man, this is incredible. This is the type of high quality research I'm going to use for citation 18, which is definitely one link and not 3 separate links. What's fascinating is of these 4 people, one of them is a woman who, based upon her data from years of Tinder use, swipes right 38.5% of the time. Myron says women swipe right 3 to 14% of the time, and his own data gives an example of a woman swiping almost 3 times as much as his high end. Read your links, bro. The conclusion the author of this piece comes to is that men have it much rougher than women on Tinder, but that's based on exactly 4 posts. I went to the subreddit and saw only about 1,300 users, the vast majority of which are men who are posting their stats. I saw very, very few people talking about the successes. It seems to mainly be a subreddit to be a confirmation bias pity party. There's very few people who are like, oh, I've had lots of success on Tinder, and here's my tips. It's just people being like, I'm 19, and women don't like me. Here's proof.
Is this like, does Tinder do that thing that Spotify like does, where it's like your Spotify wrap-ups of the year?
I don't know if they do that. I think there's a tool where you can like, run your account through it, and it'll like dig through the data.
Remember when? No,
it creates some very uniform graphics, so everyone had the exact same format. And you can compare them. It's really fascinating because this subreddit's been around for a couple of years, and there wasn't a single attempt to try to aggregate all of the data and be like, okay, we've had, a couple hundred people post. Let's try to come up with some conclusions. Because these people don't actually want data. They just want to complain about stuff. Incredible links. Great work, Myron. Let's move on to your next point. Match rates, according to him, show that men match only 6% of the time that women do. That means that of all the matches that occur, men match only 6% of the 100%. Women get 100 matches, men get 6. Okay? So this comes from a citation from globaldatinginsights.com. This is based upon a Queen Mary University study from 2016. It's a really interesting study. They made 14 fake profiles, not a huge amount, but they posted them and played with some variables, and they studied how quickly these profiles got matches. Women got more matches than men and more swipes. Case closed. Until we read the article. The actual research has some interesting quotes, such as, when it came to messaging, 21% of women were happy to initiate conversation, using an average of 122 characters in their opening messages. However, only 7% of males wanted to begin the chatting, and if they did, they only used 12 characters.
Wait, characters are like one space
one
or like
letter,
one letter?
One space,
okay.
one number.
What is this, Twitter?
So men are like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
And women are like, oh, I really liked your dog in that photo. So cute. Can you tell me a little bit more about him? What's their name? Right? A lot more engagement, a lot more content. So he's making the argument that women hate men, but the evidence we have indicates women are 3 times as likely as them to start conversations in a substantive way. Mm-hmm. So women spend more time filtering out men, and the men they find, they're much more interested in and engaged with. So the dating apps are actually pairing up people in a way where women are far more likely to be receptive. The article noted that the researchers also looked at the importance of images and bios on Tinder, finding that with a single male profile picture, after 4 hours, only 44 matches were made, whereas this increased to 238 with 3 pictures. Without bios, our male stock profiles received an average of 16 matches from women, so 16 women were like, oh man, this dude has absolutely no information, I'm so attracted to him, and this rose to 69 matches with a bio. So there are specific ways, per their research, that you can change your profile to get more matches. In conclusion, the team had some very interesting insights on how men behave on the app, saying that it seems, rather than pre-filtering their mates via the like feature, many male users like in a relatively non-selective way, and post-filter after a match has been obtained. The gaming of the system thus undermines its operation and likely leads to more frustration. So they note the fact that there's this huge gender difference on the apps. And they're like, as a response to this, men get frustrated because there's less women, and they're just like, okay, in order to increase my odds, I'm just going to like everybody. Women, on the other hand, get too many matches from men, and so they start filtering as a response. Women are thus treating it more like an actual dating process where they carefully assess partners, men shotgun blast and then see if they hit anything later. Now, I don't even think this is necessarily blaming either sex. It's not saying that women are more selective or that men are douchey. It's saying that the actual just makeup of the app incentivizes a certain behavior and people lean into that. right? If you can come up with an app that has a 50-50 gender ratio where this isn't a problem, most likely this effect would disappear or become a lot less common. There's also a article from arxiv.org that had some other insights from the study. This was the actual piece, not just the content, not just the article based on their piece. The piece was titled A First Look at User Activity on Tinder. They note that Tinder suffers from far greater ambiguity, where other dating services make a particular effort to pair appropriate people. Tinder makes no such allowances. There's even a lack of guidelines that might create a commonality of intent between the user base instead. Tinder's purpose is left open to interpretation, allowing the ecosystem to emerge from a bottom-up perspective. Thus, profiling its usage is key for understanding this recent social phenomenon. This is the first, thus, measurement study of Tinder. And I read this, and they're not explicitly saying this, but I was like, wait, okay, first there's the fact that Tinder does just randomly shove people at you. I think it's not even random because they shove people who've paid money, and they're more likely to be at you.
Yeah.
So unlike other apps, which like at least attempt to pair people together based off interests, Tinder is a much worse app, and women are far less likely to swipe on people because they're not seeing profiles automatically that are already aligned with their interests. So that's check one. But second, until I read this, I'd completely forgotten that Tinder started as an app for hookups.
Yeah.
Like, I think of Tinder as just like a normal dating site, but this is 2016, only a couple years after it launched. I was like, oh fuck, it's not just women evaluating men for long-term partners, it's women looking at men for quick hookups, evaluating not only whether or not they're attractive, but do they seem like someone who would respect women and myself, right? I'm not going to rehash why women like might actually enjoy sex. We did that in the last episode, but I think it's worth returning to the idea that sex poses many more risks for women than it does for men. Right?
Yes.
So Tinder is a really bad example of women's interest in like getting together with men in relationships. Because A, when the study was done, it was really not exclusively for that. The ambiguity was kind of like part of the experience. And B, there's a lot more evaluation that goes into, is this guy a safe hookup rather than is this guy someone I could see myself on a coffee date with? Oof. Oof, oof, oof. He goes on. If that still doesn't convince you, look at any Tinder insight graph between men and women. I think this is the Spotify list.
Yeah. From
swiping, matching, chatting, and ultimately meeting a man for a date or two, you can visually see women's genuine disinterest in men. Lastly, women's actions. When's the last time, if ever, a girl asked you out, took you to dinner, or initiated contact for any social, romantic, or sexual interaction? Did a girl offer to pay off your student loans, buy you a car, or help you out in any way? Talk to me, Naomi. How many times have you approached men in your life?
A lot.
What sort of things have you been like? Have you been like, can we go on a date sometime?
No, I like keep it friendly, you know? I have a fear of rejection just like everybody else in this world. I would say that I have heard studies that this relationship is more, long-term relationships are more successful when the woman is the one who approached the man in the first place.
Probably because they put more thought into it.
Probably.
Probably because they spent 122 characters customizing their response.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, I think initially was the one who first messaged me. I think she asked me out. She's offered.
No, you messaged her first.
No, that's not true.
Yes.
She messaged me about my comment about high-waisted denim. Yes, come on. You got to know the family history, Naomi. Yeah, I mean, like, she's offered to support me through school if I wanted to get a master's degree. She pays for dinner almost as much as I do, and we split all the household costs. I think the difference is that he's not thinking of, like, average relationships with women because he has no experience with that.
Yeah.
Has no interest in learning more about that. He's thinking of, like, supermodels from OnlyFans who get messaged by 10,000 men a week, right? Like, they don't remember the existence of these guys after 5 minutes because they're all the same. It's all, like, dudes being like, boob, show boob, get boob.
So boo.
Now, there's a difference between that and the experience those women have versus, like, people who probably can relate to the idea of like a receptionist at your college library asking you on a date, or a woman at work who keeps baking cookies for you, right? Like, women do this all the time, but it's like not the top 0.001% of women that he finds attractive who like don't have tattoos or colored hair and are all natural, pretty virgins who also enjoy sex. You know, he's looking for such a highly specific type of woman that like probably isn't going to have the need or the desire to do any of this. Women give attention to men all the time if they're not so goddamn picky about the type of woman that they're looking for. He has the stats that he himself provides that shows that women initiate dating conversations 3 times as much as men do. Draw your own conclusions. Or don't, because you might start believing this stuff. What does it say that women initiate divorce 70 to 80% of the time? The average span of marriage is only approximately 7 years, Naomi. How serious can their interest in men possibly be if they so easily divorce the love of their life?
Okay, so we talked about this in one of the first episodes, and I brought it up, and you were like, we'll talk about it later. Heard that stat, and then I heard the reasoning behind the divorces, and a lot of them had to do with the unequalness of housework.
Fellas, Naomi's forgetting we talked about this for a whole episode.
No, you told me to wait until later.
No, we talked about this. We talked about the law firms that he cites, which are like, hey, here are some of the reasons.
You know what? It's been like 8 weeks since we've been doing this, and I'm ready to cry every
his own
day.
stats give us the reasons women break up, and it's like, I'm taking care of 6 kids, and they're all sick, and my husband is playing Elden Ring on his PS5 that he bought with the money we were supposed to buy medicine with for our baby. Yeah, I guess the real question is not how serious can their interest in men be, but it's more of like how shitty can men be if women want to overturn their entire life in order to get away from unloving, unhelpful, and abusive partners. He's once again presuming women are 100% responsible and men are 100% innocent. And it's a really good tactic for your book where you're like, men, you're perfect. Keep being you. Women, God, just really dropping the ball here, gang. If that's not convincing, look at where women invest most of their time. When polled, Gen Z, born 1995 to 2012 women, rank men 7th place behind travel, career, education, experiences, and tellingly, starting a family. While millennial women, whose youth and beauty have long left them, still rank finding a man at 4th place behind their careers, education, etc. I want to point out the second sentence in that was citation 21.
Yeah.
The third sentence in that was citation 20.
Yes.
That is not how citations work.
Oh, crazy.
I also looked at the citation list, and that's how he orders it. He goes 19, 21, 20, 22.
That's so hot.
He could have just swapped the numbers around. He paid someone allegedly to edit this book, and that's what they came up with. So the citation he gives for this millennial stat, I didn't dig too much into the Gen Z stat because, as we've talked about, everyone of our generation is poor, and so they're behind in a lot of these experiences, and they rank like not dying in the street above, finding a long-term partner. So I've done a millennial stat. It is a CNBC article, study singles American women say career is priority over having kids. Wednesday, June 27th, 2018, by someone named Sarah Berger. So this is a study done by a market research firm of independent women, and it's trying to figure out how to market stuff to them. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, there's a lot of consumers out there who are independent women. Mm-hmm. What are their priorities? What sort of things can we sell them?
Yeah.
I think market research is okay. I think market research knows a frightening amount about a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's still the bias where it's they need to produce a report that they can sell to people. So unless they have some clear takeaways, they're not going to be able to market it as well. So there might be a bias there. Whatever. So the study is titled Reaching the Modern Independent Women. It includes a quantitative survey fielded from single men with no children and never married, single women with no children and never married, and married women, as well as qualitative focus groups comprised of similar demographics. It is based on the views of 1,217 respondents to the ages of 30 and 45. For single women, as Aaron says, the top 3 priorities, in fact, had nothing to do with marriage or family. 44% of single women respondents ranked living on your own as their number 1 priority, 34% ranked establishing a career as their top priority, and 27% ranked financial security as the most important. What's the issue here?
The old contract. I'm just kidding.
No, the issue is the new contract. Have you been paying attention? The issue here is the survey is surveying single women in their late 20s to early 40s. It is not including women who are in relationships or married, something which might indicate those people consider those things a priority.
Yeah.
So what does Pew Research have to say about this? Well, in a May 2020 piece they found that only 9% of millennials in 2020 were single. 91% of millennials, men and women, are in relationships. I didn't see a clear gender breakdown. I'm presuming it's comparable. 13% married with no children. 30% married with a child, and 12% without a spouse, but with a child. more millennials have actually gotten together with someone, birthed a child, and then split up or been separated than are living by themselves. Do you understand the implications of that? 44% of 9% of millennial women say their top priority is living by themselves. 4 to 5% of all women in this age range. Oh my God, what a catastrophe. But yeah, he's saying that, like, if you're dating someone, that means you're not serious about settling down. That's his conclusion. It's not actually his conclusion because he didn't read it and he jumped to some crazy conclusions. But yeah, all the research indicates the vast majority of millennial people have prioritized getting together with someone. Also, it's worth noting that of those 4 to 5% of women who say their top priority is like living by themselves, that doesn't mean they 100% do not want a relationship with a man. Just that at this stage in their life, they want to live by themselves, owe the humanity. Maybe you can date someone who has an apartment across town. I really tried to find some research about men's interests because I found it weird I didn't bring that up at all. What do you think men's priorities are compared to women?
I would say the same.
I would say probably comparable with more of a focus on careerism. That was my assumption.
Okay.
What's interesting is I could find no solid research from this last decade of men's interests. I could find no solid research from like after 1996.
Boobs.
I know what Steve Harvey thinks. Steve Harvey's like, oh, I gotta be at the top of the heap or whatever. The best I could find was a study of 2,000 UK individuals from 2013 done by a deodorant company.
Hot.
Yeah. This was a Daily Mail article which discussed the study, and it looked at people's perceptions of what constituted an ideal life and then what age they thought they would be by the time they achieved it. The top 5 things that women thought were the key stages in ideal life were being financially secure, having a family, getting married, traveling around the world, and owning a dream home. For men, it was being financially secure, having a family, having a successful career, traveling around the world, and getting married. Women ranked marriage higher than men and were more optimistic that they would achieve it and establishing a family before them. They thought they would probably get married and settle down 2 years before men thought they would, which I think indicates maybe some naivete, but also possibly just like putting a greater focus on it, spending more energy on those things.
Yeah.
Prioritizing. Men also ranked having a successful career 3rd compared to women's 6th. This tracks with our cultural stereotypes about women being obsessed with weddings and men wanting nothing to do with them, right? Mm-hmm. Let's turn it around. How often has your man talked about how excited he is to be a father? How often does he help you with wedding planning? How frequently does he talk about how excited he is to get married, right? Like, he wants to portray women as completely uninterested, provides a super shitty stat, and we look at it, it's actually men who are less focused on getting married and settling down. I mean, both of them considered having a family to be important. But yeah, this idea that, like, you can use any of this information to draw conclusions about the larger population is bad. Moving on. Making things worse and further complicating matters, which should be the title of the book. A crucial clarification needs to be made here about women's interest in men. Nowhere did I say women had no interest in men. I merely said women were not as interested in men. Of course women still like men, just top-tier ones. This is no surprise to anyone. The genetic record shows women would only settle for superior men to bear children with. Keep in mind, he's never proven this. He's proven that women were more likely to pass their genes down. And as we've discussed, the people that were most likely to have large harems of women were, kings and sultans and Genghis Khan. Maybe not the most attractive or genetically diverse or whatever group of people. It's fascinating to me, too, because he's really conflating, like, physical attractiveness and financial stuff. He's really muddying the waters here. He's like, top-tier people. Women are attracted to top-tier individuals. And I think his original implication was it was just resources, but now there's a little bit of, like, attractiveness, because he brought up all that stuff about swiping, and the only thing you can really swipe on at the first glance is how someone looks. So I think he's trying to have his cake and eat it, too, and introduce the idea that, like, women are attracted both to men with lots of resources and attractive people. The problem with this is, as we brought up, the people who have the most resources throughout human history were not insanely attractive by modern standards. They were people with dad bods, people who didn't have to work outside, who did not have insanely tan skin and whatnot.
Do you know who was still attractive even with a dad bod? Thor in the Endgame.
You're right. He is a top tier. adult male that all women are attracted to. So he goes on and says, this is the most important biological decision a woman can make. So naturally, women would insist on the best possible man they can get. This kind of disproves the whole Bill Gates harem hypothesis, but whatever. It is and always has been part of the routine, healthy human nature for women to be choosier than men. But whereas women may have been picky in the past, their standards used to be attainable. If a man worked hard, stayed in physical shape, and was a good provider, he was reasonably assured he'd attract someone. Furthermore, in times past, economic necessity would force women to the bargaining table, where they would have to reconcile what they like versus what was available in terms of men. It wasn't perfect, but your average man could pair up with your average woman these past 1,000 years. So, I mean, it's been good for 0.5% of the 200,000 years of human history. That's not bad. What?
This is bullshit.
So I've been reading a book. It's called Women: A History of an Idea. And I want to bring in some of the stuff they talk about. Because the book is about women's role in American society throughout, like, the development of America. It's like a country, an institution, a force for good and bad across the world. We may even discuss it on the podcast, not because I'm going to, like, go into graphic detail, but it's really fascinating tracing how, like, women's roles in society directly dictated what was considered, like, attractive and appealing to men and to themselves. So the book talks about America's founding. A bunch of men came over in the 15th, 16th century. They were seeking free property and better opportunities than they had in England. During that period, for the first several decades, men outnumbered women by 1 to 7 to 1 to 16 until the colonies got better about advertising. So a decent chunk of early America had men with no chance of getting a wife. Now, you might say, this is women being picky and pairing off with only the wealthiest men, and it's like, there were vast differences in the quality of life for the women who came over and the options they'd have. Mm-hmm. You would have one person who had an outhouse on his property, and that was considered really good, because a lot of people just pooped in the woods at that point. There were some people who could afford the, like, absolute bare minimum of having candles in their house, so you could do things after dark. Mm-hmm. And there were other people who had these, like, log mud huts where there was no lighting after the sun went down. And because it got so cold in the Northeast, where America was founded for most of the year, they wouldn't have windows either. They'd have tiny little slats they'd put, like, oil paper in, if they did have anything at all. So you'd basically live in a dark cave most of the time. It was not an appealing lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. Men were thus not guaranteed women throughout early American life, so he's completely wrong. What did America do to correct this? Well, in order to correct this gender ratio, which was causing all sorts of problems in the early colonies, they began advertising to English and European women and basically lied to them, saying that life was easier in America. And they were like, hey, you have a shitty life doing menial farm work over in England or industrial stuff. What if you came over to America where we're so prosperous, all you have to do is be a housewife and stay inside doing basic household chores? And for a lot of women, that was considered super appealing. The problem was, everyone was super poor up until the U.S. started industrializing. So women would come over, having been completely tricked, and be forced to be another farmhand on their husband's property because they needed all hands on deck in order to raise enough food to survive for another winter. That didn't lead to strong relationships, believe it or not. I don't think there was a lot of true love that was found over these, like, lies and mistruths that were spreading. But keep in mind, something we've already brought up here, this was also in the middle of crazy racism and religious discrimination throughout the entire, like, early American century. It wasn't just unique to America, but it was, like, something that clearly defined a lot of our culture. This was discrimination, not just against people who you would consider right now to be minorities, which, I mean, the right seems to be pretty fine with discrimination against people right now who are considered minorities. This was against groups like Italians and Irish and Catholics, people who are widely considered to be like white Americans today. Huge swaths of people during this period were completely inaccessible for dating. Not in a, oh, she didn't match with me or swipe right on me kind of way. In a, I might die for approaching them at the wrong time of day way. Mm-hmm. So this idea that, like, things were better in the past is once again completely wrong when you know anything about history. And I will once again reiterate my argument. Even if the world of modern dating is frustrating, it is still a much better time for dating right now than it has been in the past. You can approach really anyone you want with no fear of your life. Mm-hmm. You have a lot more options and opportunities to meet people than you did in the past. He goes on, that was until the internet, especially Instagram. Because while the Industrial Revolution, capitalism, and the welfare state may have liberated women from men, not true. The internet has made them delusional regarding their dating expectations of men. What's cool about the internet, and Instagram in particular, is it also caused a lot of eating disorders and teen suicides. There's some
And
really,
anxiety.
yeah,
And depression.
great stuff, Instagram. Thank you, capitalism, for birthing that.
Woohoo!
Don't believe me? Watch the Fresh and podcast. Fresh and pod. I think he means fresh. I didn't even watch the Fresh and pod. I think he means Fresh and Fit podcast after hours. Boy, editors really should have caught this. Watch the Fresh and podcast after hours. We make a female delusion calculator with stats from men in the United States. A majority of women we poll consistently describe their ideal mate as 6 foot plus, $100,000 per year. It doesn't say dollars, this is $100K per year. 100K Lego minifigures a year.
100K calories per year.
And not obese, not knowing this man is literally in the top 1% and nearly impossible to find. We didn't even add in if he's handsome, charismatic, funny, charming, or some other trait women demand in their dream man. Imagine women being like, can you be charming? Can you, not murder me in my sleep? That would be great. The scary part is none of them are even aware of how rare this man is. When we tell women the slim statistical chances of finding this man, they say bullshit like, he's out there. I'm gonna manifest it. I deserve it. I know my worth. Or my personal favorite, the I'm not settling for less. I'd rather stay single response to reality. Oh, so women know what they want? And he's like, fuck you. How dare you have standards?
Yep.
Here's where things get kicked into high gear, Naomi, because I want to talk about men and women's ideals and what that means for dating culture.
Okay.
This may be obvious, but I think it's worth reiterating. Both men and women often have unrealistic expectations of reality. Especially 18 to 24-year-old women that you drag onto your podcast, Myron. It takes time in the dating market to identify what's realistic. Many people settle down with a partner who is not their platonic ideal of a mate. Find me a single person who says that their partner is perfect. They don't want them to stop leaving the toilet seat up or farting too much in bed. That would be more attractive with a better haircut or different pair of shoes or losing a few pounds. The difference is, people in happy relationships, which I know is a difficult concept for this man, recognize the positive aspects of their partner outweigh the superficial. I'll repeat that again. People in happy relationships recognize the positive aspects outweigh the superficial and realize over time that the superficial doesn't mean as much as the contentment the rest of the relationship brings. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's almost like people want to spend more time with people that they actually get along with.
Yeah, let's talk about unrealistic expectations. So CPA, practiceadvisor.com, had a August 2022 article, and this was about what college grads expected that they would make straight out of college. Polling of college grads indicate that students in college now expect to make $104,000 in their first job after graduation, which is $46,000 more than they expected to make 3 years ago. More than half, 58%, say the average starting salary of $56,000 isn't as high as they expected, with nearly 1 in 5, 18%, saying that average starting salary is much lower than expected.
Okay. You don't realize how unrealistic these stats are until you are freshly graduated from college.
Exactly.
Because you feel so fucked.
Per his logic, these people will never get jobs.
Yeah.
These people are never going to find their dream job. They're going to be homeless, mooching off of this state for the rest of their lives. We know that's not true. Everyone in college has this misguided perception of how much money you're going to make. And then the grim reality of, oh shit, I have a bachelor's degree. I'm going to have to work in restaurant service for a bit until I find a position. I think this is a really good example of how people may have unrealistic expectations and then settle for things that are not their platonic ideal.
Yeah.
Second, we've already brought up several pieces of evidence pertaining to women responding affirmatively to men who are deemed average attractiveness, including 2 studies he himself brought up, 1978 and 1982 studies about approaching people. Remember, in those studies from, I think, the University of Florida, 56% of women agreed to a date with an average-looking stranger when randomly approached by them when going about their day. There's also that 2018 study of 150,000 dating messages that found women message attractive men less than average-looking men. Listen to our first episode for that. So he's saying women have insanely unrealistic expectations, and this means these women will never find partners. women may realize they have unrealistic expectations and message people who they don't consider the platonic ideal. Yes, they may want a guy who's 6 foot tall, but will consistently message men who are 5'10, 5'8, 5'6, because at the end of the day, the platonic ideal is not what they need to be truly happy.
Yeah.
Third, believe it or not, men can also have unrealistic expectations of partners. Aaron is acting like every single woman is aloof and stupid and can't find a man. But is he looking for women who have a higher BMI, women who are older, women whose whole homes are filled with Disney merch and wear a Mickey Mouse t-shirt everywhere? He's the one who's a little delusional because his entire exposure to women seems to be Instagram and porn. He even writes off the attractiveness of women over the age of 30, 3 paragraphs before we get here. He's like, if you're a millennial woman, you're past your prime. One of my favorites was I followed someone on Twitter who I think used to be a sex worker, and they were talking about this guy who's like this like alpha crypto influencer who posted a bunch of photos and like was like, don't date women over the age of 25, they're all used up and unattractive, and had like some photos of him at an event surrounded by beautiful women. And she's like, I was at an event, this guy paid us to be there, right? Like he wanted to be perceived as super attractive, but most of the women there were over the age of 30. And these men couldn't tell that these women were not like in their 20s because they have this incredibly skewed perception of like you're automatically unattractive if you turn 30. So all these women were like, yes, I'm 20. And he was like, how's college going? And they're like, college is great. I was rushing my sorority, when like most likely they, have had a stable job for several years already.
This is kind of like when high school men are like, oh, I want a woman with big tits. And it's like you're a freshman in high school. Your understanding of what women is based off of the media. And every single character that was in a Disney movie who was playing a teenager was at least in their early to late 20s.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. You think of High School Musical, and it's like, I want to date a high school. You mean that guy who's 25?
And has rock hard abs and has the hair of a, 15-year, not 15, but you know what I mean. It's very lush.
He has that Zack and Cody hair.
Troy Bolton.
Yeah. Metro UK in 2018 had an article by Miranda Larby, June 14, 2018. What the perfect body looks like according to men and women. I wasn't able to find a huge amount of research, but at 2018 polling that this article talks about looked at 1,000 Americans and found that 35% of men thought that 124 pounds was the ideal weight for women. Only 9% thought that 172 pounds, the actual average weight of women in America, was ideal. Men might have some unrealistic expectations.
124 pounds.
Ideal weight for women.
That's like the size of a dog.
That's
124 pounds is like you are the weight you were in college if you like freshman year before you gained the freshman 15.
Yeah, I mean,
like your ideal weight for a woman is so unrealistic because their metabolism hasn't kicked up.
And there's women who are definitely like this, but like the vast majority of women do not have the metabolism or lifestyle to, get into this shape. And so men whose perception of women is heavily influenced by Instagram and porn probably think that there's tens of millions of these women out there, when in reality they're a relatively small fraction. Cosmetic World had an article where it's an online blog and forum talking about like hair and like shampoo and other stuff, which seems highly specific, but they looked into what people consider the most attractive hair color. The most attractive hair color, according to men, 42% of men, the majority of men, 42%, found blonde hair to be the most attractive hairstyle. This was followed by brunette, 36%, red, 16%, black, 5%, and gray, 1%. But only 2 to 12.7% of women have blonde hair naturally. Why is there such a wide range? Well, some women have blonde hair in early life that then turns darker or brunette later in life. So it's hard to measure like who's actually considered a blonde. The difference is some people are born blonde and it turns dark over time, but others stay blonde forever. So 42%, majority of men want blonde hair, but a minority of women actually have that attribute. Same thing as the weight. So my point here is not to nitpick that men have standards. It's to say, one, you can't call out women for having quote unquote unrealistic standards when men are like, I want an ideal woman who could fit inside the actual average weight of a woman, like a China nesting doll, right? And second, like, obviously there are still men out there dating and getting into relationships with people who are not their platonic ideal. You can't pretend that like every single person who has standards is going to demand that they have to find these or they're not going to settle down.
You know what I was thinking about the other day? I was like, when I go on a first date again, I'm going to have to explain to them that I'm naturally blonde. How embarrassing is that?
That is weird.
Yeah.
Damn.
Because even everyone that I work with is like, I'm like, oh yeah, when I was blonde. And they're like, you were blonde?
Yeah.
And then I have to like show up receipts. And now everybody that like has been my friend for a while and like has known me blonde and has known me as a brunette are like, I can't unsee you like being a brunette.
This is a difficult question. Do you think people are treating you as smarter?
Yeah, that's partly why I dyed my hair right after graduation. Was because I needed a job and I needed them to take me seriously in the role.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, you could have had a job appearing on this podcast. Okay, so he's going to wrap up this chapter. I'm going to skim through this because it's a lot of bullshit. I could write another book solely on the negative impact the internet has had on female delusion. Another 93-page book. Wow. But in short, here are 7 main takeaways about the internet's effect on dating. All men must know. So 7 different things all men need to take away. First, there's a skewing effect on the percentage of men women are willing to date. The consensus was around 20% based partly on the OkCupid study. This is corroborated by the human genetic record and men's general experience. Women insist on only the top 10% of men through apps like Instagram and Snapchat. Even that might be an outdated measure, as recent research shows women only swipe right on 5% of men's dating profiles today. Okay, so he's like completely fucking up the stats that were already fucked up. Like, this is not what he said earlier. He's exaggerating it further. But to that, I say women think men take ugly photos and maybe don't dress great. And if you improve how you present yourself online, you can improve your match rate. And then, obviously, women have settled down and continue to settle down with men. Moving on. These goalposts are constantly moving. It was 20% yesterday, 10% today, 5% tomorrow. Lord knows it'll be like in another short 5 years. Absurd as it is to think, women could get even pickier than the top 5% of men. Keep in mind, nothing is stopping them.
Why do they need to be stopped?
Because society was better when even an average-looking man for 1,000 years could pair up with an average-looking woman. I would say the really frightening thing is that women might have such high standards they start dating women, which would be a big problem.
Oh my God.
But this is also exactly the same point as last time. His first point was women are getting pickier. His second point is women are getting pickier, but it might be getting faster. Oh my God. Third point, remember, they don't like men that much, and they're constantly bombarded with attention and offers of sex from men online. Hey, I wonder why they don't like men that much. There's no reality check in today's society to stop them from perpetually increasing their standards. You should expect women to become choosy over time, not less. To this point, again, keep in mind, women dislike men so much they message men 3 times as often as men message women when they match. Those are his own citations. But also, this is point 2 and 1 again. He's literally saying because women don't like men, their standards are increasing and they're getting choosier.
I don't know why we're surprised.
These are 7 points, and so far he has won. Number 4, blah, blah, blah. Internet makes it seem like women have unlimited options, so women are going to get only more picky over time. He says, again, women account for 56 to 70% of date flaking, which, according to his own stats, as we discussed, men flake at exactly the same rates as women do, and 70 to 80% of divorces in the West. So he's saying that women have completely delusional dating standards. Women have hundreds of messages in their inboxes, so women think that they're entitled to everything. This is literally points 1 to 3 over again. 5th, the quality of women will decline. Okay, a new point. In not being that interested in men in the first place, but still having a limitless number of men thrown at them over the internet, women will find no reason to remain beautiful or feminine. Why should they? It takes a lot of work, and the armies of simps on the internet will ensure even the most average of women have the male interest and attention they need. This has already happened with 70% of young women now overweight or obese. Let's look at that. The NIH, National Institute of Health for US.gov, has some information on overweight and obesity stats. And yes, a significant portion of the American population, specifically young American women, is overweight. But wait, let's dig into those stats. So according to the data from 2017 to 2018, of all men, 34% were overweight. Of all women, 27% were overweight. So men are significantly more likelier than women to be overweight. Now, for obese people, including severely obese individuals, men were 43% likely to be obese. Women were 41.9% likely to be obese. So men are still letting themselves go more than women are. I mean, we're not even talking about like lifestyle and how capitalism has forced us to have certain diets that perhaps aren't the healthiest, and how capitalism has forced us into suburban areas which are not beneficial for exercise, and it's impossible to get around with a bike in most American cities. No, it's that women are letting themselves go. Great stuff. So he's saying women are overweight, but ignoring the fact that men are more overweight, and also the fact that, just the majority of adults struggle with weight. This is a non-unique argument, and he's not proving that men are actually putting in any effort to stand out from the crowd. My conclusion, based off all the information he's talking about, is it's actually really easy to get a lot of dates if you just work out a little bit, which I think is the perspective that he's endorsing, and not necessarily a positive one. But I guess to that point also, being overweight is not a death sentence. It's not the end of the world. The BMI system has lots of problems where even someone who's super jacked, like say a Aaron Tate of the world, is someone who would be considered unhealthy by the standards of BMI. So let's not rely upon that, bud. But it gets worse, because not only are 70% of women overweight or obese, Naomi, a similar percentage have mutilated their bodies with egregious piercings or tattoos. Naomi, remember when we talked about tattoos earlier?
Yeah.
14% of men said they were more likely to swipe on someone who had a tattoo. I also have spent too much time on the internet.
Yeah.
And I recall in the early 2000s to mid-2010s, there was an incredibly popular website called Suicide Girls.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Suicide Girls?
No. I've heard of Suicide Boys.
Suicide Boys. Well, they are still active. They have their website. They also have an Instagram, which has 10 million followers.
Ooh,
30 times as many as Aaron has on his Instagram page.
Huh.
I don't think there's any like actual porn on the website. It's literally just photos of women with tattoos.
They're
and
just
piercings.
pretty girls. No,
it's
and
just
split
attractive,
tongues.
confident women.
And
the site
split
has been
tongues.
around for 21 years, significantly longer than other porn websites, because so many of them are like run by sex perverts and get sued into oblivion for like non-consensual photos being published or whatever. But I looked on this. Every study I found is like, well, okay, so they surveyed everyone. Everyone's like, tattoos are cool. They survey men, and men are like, oh, I don't like every tattoo. But yeah, women with tattoos are generally pretty hot and confident, and I find them more sexually desirable. It's interesting because he's saying that like tattoos are horrible, but if men find them sexually desirable, you'd think they'd fall under the old contract and he would encourage it, because that's the sort of thing that would make men and women more likely to pair up. He's adding this new stipulation that part of like the old contract is having just virgin, unblemished skin, which I find very funny. But I also find this funny because he's trying to make this argument that women need to appear in a certain way, when the majority of his listeners, if they're over the edge of like 12 or 15, are probably going to be like, no, women with tattoos are kind of pretty. So I don't even know how this serves his argument. It's just the stupidest thing where he's revealing his personal preferences and trying to apply it to the world. But women's personalities have also been destroyed. Where sweet, kind, feminine women once were, we now have vapid, arrogant, vindicative, and mean women today. The vast majority of them are simply not capable of a healthy relationship. This is completely random. I don't think he's made any assertion about this besides saying women might become arrogant because they get too many messages. I assume women angrily shutting down men who are harassing them on the street is kind of his mental image of women being angry, which, good for them. I don't have a problem with that. I think this is also completely ahistorical, because he's forgetting, or maybe just doesn't know because he hasn't done any research, suffragettes in the 19th and 20th century used to carry around hat pins. These hat pins were 5 to 9 inches long. It was effectively a long dagger. And the reason they carried around these long hat pins, and hat pins continued to get longer and pointier, was because they were constantly harassed by men when they went out in public. These are men who would either approach them and like use untoward language towards them that they didn't appreciate, or would just like assault them when they were on the streetcar or out in public. So women started stabbing them. Women started literally mutilating men with hat pins.
Good.
Because that was the way they felt they could address the problem.
Yeah.
It got so bad that certain municipalities outlawed women having hat pins because so many of these attacks were occurring. So he's like, women are becoming meaner. They used to be all nice and feminine. And I'm not saying this was the most common thing, but we're literally coming from an era where there were like women stabbing men in the streets for talking to them wrong. This is also an era where there were lots of women anarchists who were like blowing up buildings as they like attempted to spread anarchist principles and unionization to the masses. So like the idea that women have become more aggressive overall is kind of crazy. If anything, women have kind of mellowed out. The Guardian had an article in 2017 which kind of dismisses this idea too, because the research seems to indicate that women, unlike men, have dopamine reactions to being nice. So this is not a perfect study, but it does kind of, it spurs some conversation, I would say. Basically, they set up sort of tests where they would give people money and like say, you know, you can either keep all of this, or you can share it, and then they study people's brain reactions. And women's brains release significantly more dopamine when they chose to share stuff than men's did. And when they like put in special receptors to block the release of that chemical, women were far less likely to do it. So the conclusion was women actually have something, whether it's like sociological or biological, they have something in their brains which means that they are rewarded and feel better when they're nicer and do better things for people, right? That's not something men have. So like even if women, as he's saying, are getting meaner, quote unquote, overall, they still have a very high incentive to be nice because that's where their pleasure center rewards them. Just thought I'd throw that in. Number 6, the internet provides a third way in which women can support themselves. He's like, it's the simp economy. Women can sell their sex so they don't need men anymore. And he's like, obviously this is just going to lead to women not wanting to rely on men at all and no relationships because they just get all the money and don't have to deal with men. I would say that kind of plays into people of our age being poor. As we've talked about in prior episodes, we have significantly less funds at this stage of our life than people did in the past. One of the things we talked about in one of our first episodes of this podcast was revolting prostitutes, where the authors point out that one of the easiest ways to make large quantities of money fast is sex work.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will turn to that, whether or not they approve of sex work, whether or not they plan to do it long term. If they just need to make a buck, sex work is a good way to go. The smallbusinessblog.net had some stats on OnlyFans, and they concluded that the average creator on OnlyFans makes $151 a month.
Really?
Naomi, how much money do you think you make on a monthly basis from your job?
I make amount.
Is it more than $151?
Yeah, it's definitely more than $151.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So $151 a month probably isn't the best way to profit.
No.
Okay, keep in mind that is a stat where they took the average number of users on each account and the average fees paid by each user and just multiplied them together. So it was like $21 and $7.50 or whatever, and they came up with $151.
Okay.
The problem is that doesn't include taxes. That doesn't include the fees. I think OnlyFans takes like 30 or 40%.
Jeez.
And it doesn't include the fact that it's very, very skewed towards people at the top.
Yeah.
People like Bella Thorne. Who I guess
Bella
was
Thorne.
Bella Thorne.
Yes.
Okay. Was a former Disney Channel model, and she went on OnlyFans.
Shake it up.
She makes $1 million a month. That's 6,666 of those $151 subscriptions.
So super fun, super fresh. I know a girl that's not a top earner, but she is on OnlyFans, and she makes enough to pay for her apartment in Old Town and, all those good things. So she makes a decent living off of it. The thing is that she got it to that point because of this like pyramid scheme that big accounts on OnlyFans are making. And it's interesting because
Do you get a percentage of people that you enroll?
Yes.
Oh, that's
No, it's not enroll. It's how many people you advertise for. So if a top earner on OnlyFans is advertising for an account, that person can say, okay, I'm going to advertise for you, but you now owe me half of whatever you earn.
Interesting.
So this girl makes a certain amount every single month, but she has to pay half of whatever she makes to this earner that's above her.
Right.
So that's partly why they might be making $151 on average, but they're also making a bunch more off of accounts that are under them.
So my point is thus: people think they can make a lot of money off of sex work, and often it's just like photos and videos of you, and actual sexual content with other people involved. The majority of people on OnlyFans do not make insane amounts of money. They make very low amounts of
Yeah.
money. Median amount would be a much more useful number. OnlyFans does not publish that, probably because they don't want to scare people off. So he's like, women are going to abandon men in order to make money off OnlyFans. Yeah, that's not really how it works right now. Most people on OnlyFans are like nurses and teachers trying to make some extra money to subsist in our horrible capitalist hellscape. Final point, the junk mail effect. Just like you are not interested in the majority of offers from junk mail, women are not interested in most requests from men, which, according to him, is literally men shouting at them in the street. In fact, he follows that. Unfortunately, because of the male sex drive, women are inundated with thousands of offers, making men just as annoying as junk mail. Blah, 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 blah. He says women feel victimized because they have so much harassment from men, but they don't really have issues. You know, other people in other countries have issues, so they hate men. They don't even have a good reason, and you need to deal with that. My advice for men here is if women are attracted to the top 1% of men, you need to get like height adjustment surgery. You need to do that thing where they like break your legs, you never walk properly again, but are suddenly 3 or 6 inches taller.
I think that like one of the first times that it actually went successfully, the guy only ended up being like an inch taller than he was.
Oh my God, that's so bad.
Yeah.
So this is where he wraps up. He says the same point 5 times.
Yeah.
So he has 3 separate takeaways for men, all of which are wrong in different ways.
Yeah.
And this is an author who people respect and love.
We are not surprised.
So the wrap up here is Aaron posits that men need to understand that women have significantly less interest in them than they do in women. He tries to prove this with a bunch of shitty citations that don't say what he wants, anecdotes that don't stand up to the slightest amount of logic, evidence that indicates women are far more forgiving and accepting of men than men are of them, women are more likely to approach men than men are of them, and he has some general ignorance of the basic conditions of history or reality, like the majority of millennial women being married or in relationships right now, which is crazy because they're all past their prime, Naomi. Why is it that men are still dating these women who are past their prime? This man is an absolute of a writer, whether it's Aaron or Myron or whoever the fuck.
I love when you say bitch.
I don't know if I want that to be the way our podcast closes.
Well, we hope you have a great week. Please detox. We'll be putting out an episode between this and the next awful.
I think that one might actually come out before this. We'll see.
God
We're putting out some
forsaken.
positive content specifically to counterbalance
Please
this.
self-care. Go, get a sheet mask, a $3 sheet mask from Target and Walmart.
Get some high thread count sheets.
Yes. I'm
Get
not
a hockey mask and destroy the home, vehicle, and body of a misogynistic podcast influencer who I believe is based in Los Angeles.
or just do that to a misogynist influencer near you. It doesn't even have to be an influencer. It could just be a misogynist.
That's true. Be the change you want to see in the world. And if
Period.
that change involves burning down homes of influential assholes in your community, we
So
endorse
be
that.
it. Yeah. Yeah. We're here to support you.
We're here to support you. And you could support us on Patreon. Don't forget, patreon.com/ I don't know, date these guys or something like that. We publish episodes early. We give you behind the scenes access at our holiday greeting cards. We got a cool map. Please support us. We love you. We could love you more.
Take care of yourself. Peace out, bitches.
We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at @DateTheseGuys or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, please send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our work, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/datetheseguys. We have behind-the-scenes information, early episode access, participation in polls, and exclusive access to a guy sibling map of date ideas for the Arizona area. Since the world sucks right now, we are currently donating all Patreon proceeds to trans organizations like the Trevor Project, a trans suicide prevention organization, and moving assistance funds for those fleeing states outlawing their very existence. Please consider becoming a member and supporting our work today.